Today we will talk about Icelandic wisdom for turbulent times. And with me, I hope I can pronounce it well, Hrund Gunnsteinsdóttir.
Well done.
Was it? Oh,
well
thank
done.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was
Excellent.
practicing last night.
Yeah.
And Hrund is an Icelandic thought leader, author, and award-winning serial entrepreneur. She's the author of the book Insight. Well,
absolutely.
Icelandic wisdom for turbulent times. What is Insight?
Great question. So insight is the Icelandic word for intuition. If you look up the word in the dictionary, you will get a similar description like you get in the English dictionary, or I imagine the Polish one. So it's more or less, it's an irrational knowing. You don't know how you know, but you know, without thinking. That's often more or less the explanation. But the way that we have opened up the Icelandic word, and that's where the wisdom lies, because I absolutely love this word, as you may have noticed.
Yes.
And insight is to me like a sculpture. It's made up of two words. It's in and saye. In means inside or into, and saye means to see or the sea.
Okay.
And so the way that we've constructed this concept around intuition is that it has a threefold meaning. It's to see within. So it has to do with our ever-flowing unconscious mind. And you can't put the sea within into boxes or silos.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because then it ceases to flow.
Yeah.
And that's very important. The second meaning is to see within. So that has to do with introspection, self-awareness. You have to know yourself well enough to be able to put yourself into other people's shoes, to be able to understand what is intuition and what is biases or fears or wishful thinking, because these are not the same things. And then the third meaning is to see from the inside out. And that has to do with navigating the ocean of life from within with a strong inner compass.
I will start with the second one, to recognize what is intuition, what is fear, and what is bias.
Yeah.
Because I think that this is the most difficult.
Yeah, I agree. This is very, very complicated. So rule number one, let's put it that way, is that you really have to know your own intuition. No one can tell you what it looks like or how it feels. You have to get to know it yourself.
Are there any exercises we can do, like meditation or?
Yeah.
Because basically, for me, I can only say a few words about my feelings.
Yeah.
My intuition is in my stomach.
Right.
And, when I hear something which is not good for me, even as a perspective, like a proposition, for example, then I feel like in my stomach.
Yes.
So that's me.
Yeah. Yeah, so that our body speaks to us. So intuition is an embodied knowledge. It's all our body is informing our intuition. And intuition is our access into the unconsciousness, which is most of our consciousness, all up to 99%.
Okay, can you explain it to a 9-year-old?
Yeah, so most of the things that we pick up during every minute of every day, like data points, sensory data, information, stimulation, we pick up with all our body. Not just a small part of the brain or not just the eyes or ears. It's all our body. And most of the things that we are taking in are unconscious. So we're not really aware of it. Like we are sitting here in front of each other, but around us, there are so many things happening. There are different colors, there's electricity, there's people talking in the hallway, there may be a car driving out.
Yes.
I'm focusing on you now and this conversation. And so our focused mind is only a very small fraction of everything that our consciousness is grasping throughout the day. And so because of the speed and the noise and the distraction that is enveloping all our lives in the world today, right? We all know that feeling. It becomes much more important to be aligned with your intuition. Because if we're not, we stop knowing what's my thought and what is somebody else's thought.
Yes,
what is my inner
when we are
compass
really in our smartphones, our whole energy is there, or consciousness is there.
Yes, exactly. And so intuition is an embodied knowledge. And for the listener, if a listener is now thinking, I've had that, like, my stomach has knotted up and I've been very anxious about something, we still need to know, is that a needless fear or is it a really good intuition? And so for us to practice to be aligned with our own intuition is so important. And it's a way of living and being. It doesn't mean that you have to change your entire life, but there is a slight difference that you put on. It's a different antenna. So you become more aware of how you pay attention to things. And for me, the most powerful way to do that is to journal. So in order to know your intuition...
So paper is always the best friend.
It is always the best friend. So, I always say to people, if you're really against using... Like, people have physical reactions. Some people have physical reaction to writing. Then I say, of course, then you use a different method. But when we put our hands and pencil or pen and we write something down, when we write down our own attention and how we think and the thoughts we think and how we navigate the world, this is a very powerful way to get to know ourselves. So, for example, just to focus on the knot in the stomach, if you're feeling very anxious, very angry, or super happy, then sleep on it, and the day after use it, consult your intuition.
Yeah,
because it gets muddy when you feel very emotional.
Yeah, you're right. So it's always a good advice not to make any decisions when you are, high or low.
Low, exactly.
That's right. And but I've been wondering. Let's say this is the next day, so emotions are gone.
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah,
and I'm starting to think about the proposition I got.
Yeah.
How to avoid going to fear again.
Yeah.
Like, because sometimes we can imagine some bad scenarios happening.
Yeah.
And even yesterday we were happy to do something new.
Yeah.
But today we are afraid. So we are producing some negative thoughts.
Yeah.
So what is intuition against those thoughts?
Very good question. That's a very good question. Here, the most important thing is self-knowledge. What are your values? What is that you really want to achieve in life? Or what kind of a person do you want to be? So this is how we anchor ourselves. So for example, I may take a decision in my life that changes my life and has ripple effects on the people around me, but I'm willing to do it. I have the courage if I know that it's really grounded in who I am and what I stand for. So there's consequences to decisions that we take, right?
Yes.
Whether they are small or big. But sometimes we build up the courage to take on the change because we know it's right for us. It may be painful, but we're willing to do it. Personal example, I got divorced after 24 years of relationship and marriage.
Wow.
It's a long time.
Really?
And he was my best friend. I took this decision and we took it together. We knew it was the best in the long run, but it was super hard. There's so much pain and sorrow that comes with it. And a lot of people around the world take decisions like that. But if you're able to take it from a well-grounded intuition, you're well anchored in yourself and what you know is best for you in order to live a fulfilling life, then sometimes we take decisions like that.
Yeah.
That's when we say life is not always easy, But it's for us to sail onwards and flourish through life or just feel that we are being true to ourselves. Then some of the decisions we take are going to be hard. But they may equally be the best ones that we can take for us at this point in time.
Sometimes when I'm lost, I use my imagination and I put myself in this new situation I'm only wondering about.
Yeah.
I put myself, imagine myself already 2 years in advance or, a few months in the future. Yes?
Yeah.
And I check how I feel.
Yes.
And I check my stomach,
yeah.
how it feels.
Yes.
To be in that, in those shoes.
Yeah.
So that helps me, of course. And you already said that everybody's different. So there is no one recipe for feeling your intuition, for really... for success or for anything, basically. So, and I know that people don't really like to even work with themselves.
Yes.
I know so little of people really knowing what they want, what they don't want. I mean, what they are willing to do, where and why they are going this direction.
Yeah.
They don't even know, I don't know, what kind of food they like, really.
Yes, it's so true. So I write about this in my book, and I say something like, it's easy to go through life like a zombie. I've done it. I've been like a machine, did really great at work. I showed up the way
I
that...
would like to know your story.
Yeah, and so I just really showed up, and I did stuff, and I came across as somebody who was really well balanced. It's very possible to function well and appear like everything is rock solid. And sometimes we actually hit a wall, we collapse, and we have to rebuild ourselves again. But some people may go through life like that, or they can decide that they want to go deeper. But what you are describing is such a brilliant and very common example. And so it just brings the attention to the importance of knowing ourselves, like just to really put in the work. What do I think? Because it's all there. The knowledge is all inside us. In this case that you just mentioned, it's simply
never simple, but
about
simply
taking what we think, what we feel, what we perceive about things, putting them down to a piece of paper, or draw them if that fits better for us, or imagine it and really be aware of how that feels in our bodies, and capture that knowledge so that we actually are able to work with it. Remember, I mentioned at the start that most of the things that we take in and perceive and think are unconscious to us.
Yes.
We can't be conscious of all the unconsciousness. It will drive us mad.
Yes.
But
I'm
there is a middle way, and we can always do better in knowing what it is that we feel, think, and want. So lots of the thoughts that we think throughout the day, I don't know how many thoughts we think. There's been...
thousands.
Thousands of thoughts, and there's different statistics that come up. Thousands of thoughts that we think during a period of one single day. We are aware of, if any, a tiny fraction of the thoughts we think. We are the thinkers of our thoughts, so we control how we think. But most of the thoughts often are dragging us down.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't even know or understand why we took this decision.
Yeah.
Why we take this decision. Thinking that, I don't know, that it was a solid and
yes,
and really practical decision, but it's not.
Yeah.
What happened in your life that you changed that? What happened that you decided not to be a zombie?
Yes. So life really just hit me in the face and made me think again. So I was very young when I was given amazing opportunities working in the field that I dreamt of working in. So I was in my late 20s when I got a job as the program manager or head of agency for a small UN agency working in Kosovo after the war. So this is just after the war, and we are rebuilding after horrible conflict, and war is always horrible for every single human being in that context. So I got this position with what was called UNIFEM at the time and is today called UN Women. And we were doing work there that was truly amazing. It was one of those years I've lived that are fullest of, like, the richness of experiences is amazing. But when I came to Kosovo, to me it was like walking into an open wound. There was so much trauma and sorrow. There was so much that needed to be healed. And people were really, really, really putting everything they could to rebuild their societies and just to be able to thrive through the day. And I came into that very open. I was just like taking in all the pain and suffering. And I decided I wanted to give it all I had. My health and well-being was not a priority, but theirs was. So I gave it all I had, and we did a great job as a team, and I'm thankful for that. But I was very drained. And I started to feel like very serious physical symptoms while I was living in Kosovo. And then I went on to work for the UN in Geneva. And I got this really rare opportunity. So I always dreamt of working for the UN. I got a permanent position with the UN.
So you were fulfilling your dreams?
Absolutely. I was following my dreams. And I got the permanent position starting in Geneva. And a permanent position means that you become a public servant for the United Nations. You work in all continents throughout your life. And I even calculated that I could go on pension at the age of 55 because I was so young when I started working there. So I moved to Geneva, and the bureaucracy and hierarchy and the stiffness of the organization really made me feel like it really made me feel like my sense of purpose was being stifled. And then I also started to think like we worked really hard, but I felt like the system had become so big that we were serving the system instead of people and the planet. That was a very deep feeling I had. And I think that also has to do with my entrepreneurial spirit. You know, I trust myself to do stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different things you have to go through in order to be given a permission to do sometimes the simplest things. And I felt the urgency of doing a good job, and I didn't feel that my sense of purpose was being met. And then at the same time, I went through a very, very difficult period in my personal life where I became a mother for the first time. And
so you were exhausted and became a mother.
I was exhausted. I was lost in work.
Double exhausted.
That's double exhausted, exactly. I became a mother, didn't sleep for a few months. My relationship with the father of my children was really hanging by a thread. And I had to take some very big decisions about, am I staying in that relationship? Am I going back to work in Geneva? And then I prepared to do everything, to go back to Geneva alone with my newborn daughter. I arranged the childcare and an apartment, and I was ready to do it by myself. But then I just sat down and thought, I had this rare moment of clarity. I went down to the sea close to where I live, all by myself, and I just saw this question came to my mind. When you grow old, Hrund, how do you want to look back on your life? And then I just saw myself, and I wasn't working for the UN in Geneva. I was doing much more the work that I'm doing.
Spoke to you.
The sea spoke to me. Yes, exactly. This was a moment of clarity. When I look back, I'm like, I can't even describe how thankful I am for having found that small window of clarity, because my life was a mess, basically. And physically, mentally, I was a mess, you know. I was going through really difficult times. Physically, I was diagnosed with 3 slip discs. I was finding it hard to tie my own shoes. And the doctor told me that I would probably never be able to work full-time ever again. It was a very, very hard time. But somehow I managed to I was always thinking like, Hrund, you need to connect within. Like, what is it that you want to do? And so I had this vision of me by the sea. And I just knew that I wanted to live life in a different way and more in tune with who I am and more in contact with people and the real world. And I decided that I would resign from my permanent position with the UN. I had no idea what would happen next. Nobody said to me, that's a great idea, that's very sensible. Nobody. And I didn't even know where I would get my next salary from. But I did it, and it was a life-changing moment. And it's had ripple effects on everything I've done since. And I remember going back to Geneva to close down my job there. You know, they offered me to stay on and take a longer time off. But I just knew it was the right thing, even if it was very hard. But I remember sitting in the Palais des Nations, which is like the Palace of Nations in Geneva, on my last day. And I had this imaginary conversation with Kofi Annan, who was then the Secretary General of the UN. And he was a big role model. And I remember thinking, and there I am 29, I think. And I'm thinking, you know, I am always going to be true to the ideals of the UN, meaning I want to make the world a better place. There is so much work to be done. But I felt deeply that we needed to change our systems. They were becoming more too dominant. And I promised myself that I would follow through with ideas that came to me that wouldn't leave me, no matter what sector or discipline they wanted to take form in, and I would have the courage to do that.
Yeah. Have you experienced something, or did you experience in that moment? I will try to to describe it, but it's a feeling in a way that you let go of something, and then suddenly a lot of free space is around you.
Yes.
And beautiful opportunities comes to you, like the real ones, like those you thought that you were dreaming of something, that you were following your dreams.
Yes.
But then suddenly you realize that it wasn't your dream.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. You know, you just said a magic sentence. It was letting go. Because in my experience, so I have so often made changes to my life. Sometimes I decide them and sometimes they just hit me and they're really hard. But like you say, when we let go of things, like I let go of this dream that I used to have, or this job that I thought I would always be in, or this direction that I had decided for me and my family, and then things open up. But it's actually very tricky to, in reality, let go. You know how we let go and then...
But we don't.
And then we have a difficult period and we're like, oh my God, I want to go back. You know, it's not going like I planned.
So we basically, we say we are letting go, but we are not.
But sometimes we do actually let go. And when that happens, I think that's because we are deeply anchored in our insight and intuition. We know what is our inner compass. With that comes an amazing amount of security, inner security and trust in life. And I think that's the alchemy, that's the magic bullet of really knowing what it means to be anchored in yourself.
Do you think that this intuition, this inner compass, I like it more, I think, inner compass, is becoming a life and business competence?
Absolutely. There's no question about it. So if we look at, so I love this question. So if the listener is working in business or basically in the work market or for the public sector, we have 3 top global risks in the world have to do with uncertainty. Yeah. It's climate change, it's security, volatility in the market and stuff like that. The 3 top skills most sought after in the work market are things like flexibility, creativity. And you see increasing emphasis in the work market and business on people having a strong inner compass. I think it's McKinsey that calls it the inner journey of the leader. We have different names and different frameworks and sentences for the same thing. It's all about, we live in a world that's changing so fast and there's so much uncertainty. No one knows what the world would be like in 5 years. What is the most important thing to do as a leader? It is to have a strong inner compass, confidence in it, confident enough to be able to ask your team, okay, so we have a situation here. I don't have all the answers. How can we work together to figure out what's the best way for plan A, B, or C? That's one of the examples of how this plays out. There's also another thing which is, it's a little bit more hard to pin down, but it's still very real. When we are connected with our intuition, and it comes also with willingness and intention to have a broad perspective, to really be open to different views. You mentioned before we started recording the show about being open. You know, that's very important. And diversity is actually very important for that, so that you are open to different views. When we have a well-honed and well-harnessed intuition, what it brings us is 2 things important in this context. We are able to see the big picture and how everything is interconnected. And it enables us to come up with really valuable insights that we are not finding in the data graphics or the reports that were made 2 years ago. Do you see what I mean? But a well-honed, it should be said, like a well-honed intuition is, it comes with a critical mind. You know, it's not just about feeling what you're feeling, you know, because we've also, I think, harmed our relationship with intuition because we also have leaders who just say things that are not true. They're full of prejudice, hatred towards groups of people. That is not a well-honed, grounded intuition, you know. Yeah, exactly. So it comes with a way of navigating and way of being.
I really love this sentence or description that intuition, insight, is our strong inner compass, and I think that it leads us to trusting ourselves. Yeah. And this is, I mean, for me, a strong, basically, help and opportunity to live my life the best I can.
Yes,
Thank
beautiful.
you so much. It was lovely to have you here, and I was waiting a long time for you to come to Poland. Do you like
pleasure.
it? Is it your first visit in Poland?
It's my first visit to
So
Poland.
what do you like the most?
The people.
Oh, great.
For sure. I've only been here for a day, and just the warmth and the humor, sometimes subtle humor.
Yeah.
I'm really happy to be here. I've been wanting to come to Poland for such a long time, and I'm super impressed with my colleagues at In Sickness and how they are organizing the launch of my book here. I feel deeply, deeply honored and grateful.
Great. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
My guest, Hrund Gunnsteinsdóttir.
Well done. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.